and welcome to another episode of Turn the Page. I'm Mark Pacey from the Wairarapa Archive, and we're taking you through three other historical related stories relating to the Wairarapa. First story. On the night of the 24th of July, on the night of 24th of July 1939, residents of Masterton were turning in for the night when a clap of thunder roared overhead. This was followed by a severe hailstorm and strong winds. As the night progressed, the wind died down and the hail subsided, but the weather wasn't through with the assault on the region. As the people awoke the next morning, they found their town covered by a blanket of cold white snow. Masterton wasn't the only one affected. In Carterton, the snow was still falling at 10 a.m. The settlements around the area were also experiencing snow. The trees' hedges are covered as far as the eye can see. It is white, a farmer from Blair Logie said. Sheep and cattle were finding the conditions tricky, but luckily it was still before lambing season, so there were no young woolly creatures trying to survive in the freezing conditions. While it was not pleasant for the animals, the children of Wairarapa were delighted. This was a perfect opportunity to build a snowman, or better yet, have a snowball fight, which resulted in hordes of soggy children heading off to school. At 9 a.m, a breeze rose up, and with it the snow began to disappear. The snowmen melted, and the children dried out. The snow had gone, but the weather continued to be bitterly cold. The Corker Corner shop on Queen Street adjusted their advertisements accordingly. Gee, it's so cold. Yes, my finders are even too cold to write a cigarette. I think that probably should be fingers are too cold to roll a cigarette. We don't go without your smoke. Oh no, smoke a pipe. Just 2 days after the first snowfall in the region, we experienced another. This time it was heavier. Residents awoke this morning to find the whole countryside as far as the eye could see under a white blanket. At an early hour, the effort was most picturesque. But a strong wind sprang up and dislodged snow from the trees and shrubs. A feature of the storm was a peculiar green-coloured lightning seen in the south between 6 and 7 in the morning, the Times Age reported. Travelling the streets became quite hazardous, not because of the snow underfoot, but the snow that would travel horizontally at great speed. It seemed everyone wanted to get involved in the great Masterton snow fight, with reports of combatants raging from the young to the old. Defensive positions were taken up on the streets, and strategic high ground on the roofs of buildings were captured, from which to rain down a barrage below. Cars attempted to traverse the streets, their wheels causing deep furrows and followed the grateful cyclists, travelling through the convenient grooves. Cars which had parked on the sides of the road found it hard to drive from the gentle slopes to the roadside, with council doing their best to clear the roads. Whether due to the difficulty of making the journey or just because it was a great opportunity for fun that couldn't be missed, attendance at Masterton schools that day were very low. Masterton Central School reported that just half its students had shown up. The depth of the snow that had fallen was so severe that the clock on the post office had its hands stuck at 2:25 a.m. due to the weight of snow on them. While the celebration amongst children and there was playful adults in towns, the farmers were concerned about this second fall of snow and the effect it would have on the animals, who couldn't find easy food as the grassy paddocks were all under snow. It was the worst snowfall since the 1918 storm, which left much of the region buried. The following day brought no new snow and the clean-up continued. Some of the telephone and electricity lines had been cut, but were quickly repaired, which included the replacement of some poles. The people fared better, the only complaints being sore eyes, which was put down to the reflection of the sun on the white snow, and that many residents are feeling rather stiff today after yesterday's snowballing. I now have a snow-related piece of music. This is called Harry in Winter. It's from one of the Harry Potter soundtracks. This is from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and this is Patrick Doyle. Harry and Winter from the Goblet of Fire soundtrack. A useless piece of information for you. In terms of streaming data, that's one of the most popular pieces from the Harry Potter score soundtracks. Next story. At 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the 1st of September, and I didn't record which year this was, that's bad archiving on my part, Peter Oakley walked into the Pioneer Tavern and asked for a jug of draught. The tap spewed forth its amber liquid, then copious amounts of froth, and then nothing. The barman had to tell Mr. Oakley sadly the pub now had no draught beer. There was no sneer from Mr. Oakley as the barman told him he could have his jug, which was only half full, on the house. The draught then extended to the flagon stock as patrons wanting their fill of draught started to buy up the stocks of the large bottles. By the following day, the whole region had run out of flagon draught. Other pubs still had a stock of draught on tap, and the newspapers of the time reported that barmen were crossing their fingers and consulting the Plimsoll line in their beer tanks, hopeful that they would have enough to get them through the weekend. There were only 3 taverns in Masterton now that draught had on tap. Now that had draught on tap, that's better. Throughout the region, the bar owners started to get worried. The Pioneer had already run out, and the rest were not expecting to last the weekend. If a pub with no beer wasn't nightmarish enough, Wairarapa was now facing being a region with no beer. The whole scenario came about when brewery workers made the decision to go on strike. Pretty soon the effects of these workers were being felt throughout the region. A pub in Greytown, south of Masterton, took an optimistic approach. We're holding out okay for bottled beer, but we're a bit low on draft, and we might get through tomorrow night. Unlike when COVID struck and shoppers fled to supermarkets to stock up, the alcohol retailers reported there was no panic buying at that stage. The newspapers reported that striking workers were set to return to work on Monday and the flow of draft would soon surge back into Wairarapa. The Tui Brewery at Mangatainoka, 70 kilometres north of Masterton, was reported to have 300,000 gallons of draft beer ready to roll. As Saturday rolled around and pubs held their breath as supplies dwindled, Monday was a long way away and hordes of thirsty patrons were flocking to bars for a drink. It wasn't helped that there was a rugby test between the All Blacks and the Springboks that weekend. The results would either be a cause for celebrations or an opportunity to drown one's sorrows. Beer deliveries had now been suspended for a week. Tanks were empty, flagons were nowhere to be found, and bottled beer was now being hit hard. The paper reinforced that the brewery workers would return to work on the Monday, but then made a statement that sent chills up the spines of those that enjoyed a cold one. Although the brewery men are expected to return to work on Monday, a stoppage by engine drivers, firemen and greasers could result in another week of inactivity on the brew house floors. The weekend ended badly. The All Blacks lost 16-10. As the papers put it, the All Blacks have no answer to rampaging Springboks. And then came some good news. The leading article on Monday edition of the Wairarapa Times Age, ahead of world headlines on hijacking, strikes, plane crashes and crime, was the headline many had been looking for. Beer supplies resume from Mangatainoka. The beer workers had returned to work as they said they would, and the drivers returned as well. But there was some disputing their pay, and all started work 2 hours late. The Tui Brewery had answered Wairarapa's call. But another big New Zealand brewery was not as forthcoming as Mangatainoka. Auckland pubs were expecting to have only wine and spirits left for patrons by the end of the week. 2 weeks after the strike began, it finally came to an end. A convoy of beer tankers left from the major breweries to replenish the empty tanks of pubs around the country. At the DB Brewery in Auckland, no fewer than 20 tankers made their way around the taverns of the area with their precious cargo. Now it was not just Tui beer that was available, but the other local brews too. This was especially welcomed by one pub, excuse me, by one pub in Masterton. The paper put it well when it said the resuming of the beer trade would provide great relief for the patrons of Masterton's Pioneer Bar and Lounge, which was one of the first to feel the pinch as far as draft beer was concerned. Because there really is nothing so lonesome, morbid or drear than to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer, especially when there's a footy game on the telly. Okay, I'm going to play you a piece of music now. I'm not even going to introduce it. I'm not even going to say what it is because you should be able to guess what it's going to be. And it's a brilliant one.
Oh, it's a lonesome away from your kindred and all, by the campfire at night, while hear the wild dingoes call. But there's nothing so lonesome, morbid or drear, than to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer. Now the publican's anxious for the quota to come, and there's a faraway look on the face of the bum. The maid's gone all cranky, and the cook's acting queer. Oh, what a terrible place is a pub with no beer. Then the stockman rides up with his dry, dusty throat. He breasts up to the bar and pulls a wad from his coat. But the smile on his face quickly turns to a sneer as the barman says sadly, the pub's got no beer. Then the swaggy comes in, smothered in dust and flies. He throws down his roll and rubs the sweat from his eyes. But when he is told, he says, what's this I hear? I've trudged 50 layman miles to a pub with no beer. Now there's a dog on the veranda, for his master he waits, but the boss is inside, drinking wine with his mates. He hurries for cover, and he cringes in fear. It's no place for a dog round a pub with no beer. And old Billy the blacksmith, the first time in his life, why, he's gone home cold sober to his darling wife. He walks in the kitchen, she says, you're early, Bill dear. But then he breaks down and tells her the pub's got no beer. Oh, it's hard to believe that there's customers still, but the money's still tinkling in the old ancient till. The Wyandottes are happy, and I know they're sincere when they say they don't care if the pub's got no beer. So it's a lonesome away from your kindred and all, by the campfire at night, while hear the wild dingoes call. But there's nothing so lonesome, morbid or drear, than to stand in the bar of that pub with no beer.
Don't need to say what that was, although when I actually, that whole story came about because I came across a photograph with it was a sign on the tap saying, you know, no beer. I immediately thought of that song and thought, how can we work the two together? That actually was originally published in an Australian beer website, and a beer appreciation website in Aussie. Of all the countries, they would appreciate it. So I wrote it for them. All right, on to our last story for today. New Zealand in the early 1990s was excited about a special American visitor that was coming to our shores. As part of a special tour, Bigfoot was going to perform at various locations around the country. It wasn't the mysterious furry Bigfoot that most people know about, but rather the giant wheeled monster truck. The United States Beast was the 7th Bigfoot constructed. It was built in 1988 for the movie Roadhouse starring Patrick Swayze, in which it destroyed a car dealership. The scene was shot in one take and cost $500,000. Bigfoot 7 continued in the movie business with another starring role, this time alongside Sylvester Stallone in the movie Tango and Cash. Bigfoot 7 started out life as a 1987 Ford pickup before heading to the gym to pack on the muscle. At the end of its transformation, it now had a 540 cubic inch 1500 horsepower engine, 5-ton military axles, 66-inch tyres, and weighed 12 tons. It really was a monster. In 1991, Bigfoot 7's career went international. Starting in Australia, it toured around the country, taking part in events to eager spectators. After an extensive journey down under, Bigfoot 7 came to New Zealand. Teaming up with its New Zealand cousin Kiwi Thunder, Bigfoot 7 went on to a 24-town tour of Aotearoa. On the 5th of January 1993, the two monster trucks arrived in Masterton. After posing for some photographs, the two beasts made their way to the Solway Showgrounds for the main event. A crowd of 3,500 packed in to watch the two behemoths do what monster trucks do. The American truck, driven by Kirk Frankish, and the New Zealand one by Bootsy Dean, thundered around the oval. Several elderly cars magnanimously sacrificed their lives for the entertainment of the people. The mature automobiles, supplied by Fagan Ford, lined up and parked for the last time. As the gargantuan tyres of the dueling titans dealt their death blows and crushed them into oblivion, the last thing they heard over the roar of the engines was a crowd cheering and howling in delight. They passed knowing that their sacrifice had been worth it and that it was appreciated by the masses. The night had started out with a series of spectacles, with monster trucks the main event. Motorcycle acrobatics were performed by specialist riders, some from as far away as the United Kingdom. Englishman Rob Hunt left the audience in awe as he performed stunt after stunt. On one occasion, he rode through a wall of flame on his trusty Kawasaki. On another, he jumped over 8 cars, and in the most hair-raising event of all, he jumped over a fellow stuntman. While Hunt was unscathed by the wall of flame stunt, Bruce Puke took the opposite approach. Instead of trying to avoid the flame, he became one. Wearing protective clothing and closely watched by Rob Hunt, armed with a fire extinguisher, Puke was ignited and became a human torch. He made his way across the oval, a glowing mass of conflagration, before he fell to the grass and was hosed down. Rising from the ashes, the bedraggled human phoenix was none the worse for the wear. The night ended with Bigfoot 7 and Kiwi Thunder causing carnage around the oval, but with less gusto than the drivers anticipated. Due to the wet conditions, they had to hold back a bit for safety reasons. Frankish later apologised he couldn't push Bigfoot to its limits, but the thousands of fans that came to see him and his Kiwi cousin were not disappointed. The night had been brilliant and would be remembered fondly by all of those who had made the pilgrimage to see this clash of the titans. Right, one last piece of music now. I struggled to find a piece of music relating to Bigfoot, and the ones that I did find, and I made this promise last week, I'm not going to do any more kids' songs. There's a bunch of kids' songs about Bigfoots. No, we are not doing that. So this one, it's slightly, we had to think sideways quite a bit. In one of the Police Academy movies, there was a Bigfoot. I forget which one. There's been 7 Police Academy movies. I think this was in Police Academy 4 or 5. So this is a piece of music from the first Police Academy movie. Probably, some people can relate to it when you're belittled when you're younger and they say, what are you going to do? And one day you'll say, I'm going to be somebody.
My foot on the gas, got the out of
Jack Mack and the Heart Attack, I'm Gonna Be Somebody. Before I close off with my joke, I do have to say something. Starting next week, we're going to be doing, well, we've done it twice now, but we're going to be doing another book. We're going to be reading another book rather than little stories. We're going to do one big one. I've been asked by a good friend of mine, many of you know him, Don Farmer, wrote a book about growing up in Greytown and has asked me to do the audio book of that, so we will be doing that for you. So we'll be slowly going through. We'll probably do 2 chapters a day, depending on how long they are, but we'll probably try and do two a day. I won't do any jokes because, he's a brilliant writer. There's plenty of his humour in there. We don't need to embellish it any more than that. So I'll do one chapter, play a piece of music, do one other one, and that should be it. According to my maths, which hopefully is sound, that will probably take about 10 weeks to do. So for the next 10 of these little radio shows, we will be hearing about young Mr. Farmer growing up in Greytown. If you haven't read his book, it's fantastic, and it's an honour to be able to read it to you. Right, so now, like I said before, we will finish with our joke. This is one relating to the snow story. Why was the snowman rummaging through the bag of carrots? Give you a second to ponder that one. He was picking his nose. Oh, excellent, excellent. We should really compile all of these because they are just so good. So we have a fantastic week. We will catch up with you Monday, as long as Monday's not a holiday and I've forgotten about it. And like I said, we will be starting with Don's book. Oh, what was it called? Walking Back to Happiness. Sorry, I had a moment there where I didn't remember it. So looking forward to doing that one for you. Have a great week, and we'll catch up with you on Monday.